Hi, everyone. My guest today is Dan Schaefer. Dan is a progressive political leader, engineer, and former candidate for the Missouri House of Representatives, District 97, where he ran a grassroots campaign centered on restoring reproductive rights, defending public education, and protecting the voice of working people. He will run again for the 2026 election. A strong advocate for democratic principles, Dan has emerged as a bold voice against authoritarian overreach in state politics, calling out Republican efforts to undermine voter-driven initiatives and silence dissent. Dan brings a rare mix of practical wisdom, policy fluency, and unshakable commitment to people over power. Whether discussing union rights, economic justice, or the creeping erosion of civil liberties, he speaks with clarity, conviction, and passion. Dan is also the creator of Frontline Progressive, a newsletter that spotlights threats to democracy and uplifts community action. He previously hosted 2 podcasts and logged over 200 interviews with influential people nationwide. With a background in engineering and a passion for honest government, Dan brings substance and enthusiasm to every conversation. Welcome to the show, Dan. I want to thank you for being here today.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. I was wondering if you could tell the audience a little bit about yourself and the area of Missouri you're wanting to represent.
Okay. Well, first of all, fair warning. If I start to ramble, please don't hesitate to cut me off. I have that tendency now, and it's just, I don't know. It's something that increases with age, I've found.
Yeah.
So if I start rambling too much, just cut me off.
Okay.
But first of all, yeah, I ran last time too. I ran in November of 24 and didn't make it, running as a Democrat, running against an incumbent Republican. But before that, I was working pretty much my whole life as I was educated as an electrical engineer, worked in engineering. I designed computers and things like that, and then wrote lots of software. Took a diversionary path off and got into sales for a little while. I wasn't really a salesperson, but I was traveled with the salespeople and traveled worldwide actually. And that was a very interesting experience. It took a lot out of me. It took a lot out of my family too. And so, eventually I stopped doing that and just, fell into marketing for a little while and did that for a little while as well, which is bizarre for an engineer. Lost my job. I was working in California at the time. Well, first of all, I'm from Missouri, grew up in Missouri. After graduating from college, I stayed here for a couple of years and then went to California and thought that I would just be out there for a couple of years, and actually was out there for almost 30 years in the Los Angeles area. So anyways, I lost my job out there around 2013-ish. The first time I've ever been laid off, and found a job back in St. Louis, which is my old roots. So I came back to St. Louis and worked here for another 10 years till I got laid off again. And by that time it was like, okay, I was like 63 years old at the time. There's nobody going to hire me being a 63-year-old, even though I felt like I was at the top of my game.
Yeah.
So, but meanwhile, I've been doing podcasts. I decided to get into political podcasting. And so I did a couple of podcasts, produced 2 different podcasts, and did probably about 200 episodes between them. And it was a thrill. Just got to talk to people just like you. I mean, you can relate. We talk to people all over the place and about all different topics. And, the biggest name I can drop here is Ralph Nader. I just gave him a call one day and surprisingly he answered the phone. I mean, it's just like, sure, I'll do it. So, so we got on and did like a half-hour podcast together, and that was fun. But I got to talk to a lot of other people too, and learned a lot about what's going on in the U.S. And finally, around beginning of last year, beginning of 2024, I noticed that nobody in my area was running for the Democratic ticket. So I called up the Democratic Party and said, "What's going on here? How come you guys never compete for these seats?" And they said, "Well, how would you like to run?" So I did the Homer Simpson, So I decided to run. And, the rest, as they say, is history. I joined kind of late in the game. So I had a fairly compressed time to do my campaigning. But even so, I still made like 35.5%. I'm running in what's known as District 97, State District 97, which is in Jefferson County. Now, if you know where St. Louis is, and St. Louis County, which surrounds St. Louis, Jefferson County is just south of there. So my territory borders the St. Louis County area. So we pick up a lot of like the suburban people from the St. Louis County area, but there's also some rural areas out here as well. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I I like Missouri. Being from Iowa, like we had talked about a little bit about earlier, it's you don't have to go too far for things to be a lot different. Like
Yeah.
even the plants that grow in Missouri are different than Iowa because of that
Yeah.
temperature difference. But
Yeah, it is.
yeah,
It is quite a bit. Yeah. We're not
yeah,
far enough south to have alligators yet, but I think in Arkansas, like the southern parts of Arkansas, they have alligators.
really, I
Yeah.
love gators. You don't
I
see them
like them
around
from a
here though.
distance.
I probably wouldn't like them if they were eating my cats, but
Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, I wouldn't
So
like that either.
Uh, all right. Well, can you tell us a little bit about the issues that the area faces? And I have your platform, but for the audience,
Mhm.
can you kind of tell us what you would like to bring and some of the issues you'd like to solve? Which I know
Sure.
is a big question. So,
It's a big question, but it's a fair question though
mhm,
too, because I mean that's what we're all about here, right? So
yeah.
last year when I was running, I s- I sort of latched on to some of the cultural issues.
Hmm.
Women's rights here has been a very contentious thing. So I made the mistake of like going down the cultural war path, and that was okay because women's rights were Missouri was like one of the first states was the first state actually to make abortion illegal right after the Supreme Court made their finding last
Hmm.
a couple of years ago. And so, that was a big issue. Gay rights and things like that is always under attack, as it is in Iowa as well.
Hmm.
And, so I kind of latched onto that and I thought, well, that'd be a pretty big grievance for people. But what I really found out after campaigning for a while, too late in my campaign is when I figured this out, was that people are more concerned about kitchen table issues.
Yeah. Yeah.
Why are we working two jobs while we still can't make ends meet, while we're giving
Hmm.
there's tax breaks, things like that. Um, Healthcare is another big thing. It's coming up
Yeah.
in Missouri again because we expanded Medicaid recently, and now we're since the federal government is pulling back on Medicaid expansion, that's leaving states like Missouri and I suspect Iowa as well, kind of in the lurch. Really, try to figure out where we're going to come up with this money to support people. And so schools are another big thing.
Yeah.
Private versus public schools. Our public schools are under attack.
Hmm.
And that's all. And again, it's not just Missouri; it's the whole Midwest, including Iowa.
Yeah.
Um, and one thing I tripped upon recently, which was I thought to be kind of interesting, was that housing prices. If you look at the housing prices today
Hmm.
uh, versus the average income, and then look at the housing prices, say, and let's just pick a year 1980 versus
Yeah.
average income, housing is 2 to 3 times more expensive.
Yeah.
And so, I look around and say, why is this? And then we keep hearing from real estate agents like, oh, there's a housing shortage. And I found out there really isn't a housing shortage. There are about 500,000 people unhoused at this point. We
Hmm.
call them homeless. Some people call them unhoused. We have more than 15 million empty housing units across. This is across the whole U.S., not just Missouri, but across the whole U.S.
Okay.
And so there is no housing shortage. What there is a shortage of is affordable housing.
Hmm.
And so what's happening is that people that have a lot of money, they're getting these big McMansions built, and the builders are gravitating toward that because it's a higher margin
Yeah.
build for them. They're ignoring everybody else.
Yeah.
And what makes matters worse, though, is that the big banks or the big financial institutions like BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, they're going out and buying up houses,
Mhm.
and they're outbidding younger people, and then they're turning around and renting them out to these people. So they're turning
Yeah.
us into a nation of renters.
Yeah.
So I don't know your age, but I suspect people like yourself. I know my son he's almost 31 right now, and he's still living in California, but um, they got it tough. I mean, this is
Yeah.
it already was tough enough when I was a kid, but it's much tougher now. And we get a lot of particularly people on Republican side saying, "Why is
Mhm.
our population dropping? Why aren't people having babies?"
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you why. Because people can't afford to buy the house and build equity in a house like the American dream. And
Right.
and this is all happening right under our noses. And so
Mhm.
these are the issues I think they're really big issues in Missouri, and these are the issues I think I can do something about.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so much I was thinking of while you were describing that. You know, it, my husband bought his house in I believe it was 2008 when they had the Obama gave some sort of credit or whatever to make it easier to purchase a house, and I am so thankful that he did that because when after I graduated college, I was looking and life was almost better in an apartment because when you
Yeah,
go to a house, it's like, okay, well, I'm going to be broke all the time. And what did I just go to school for? You
yeah,
know, to not be broke all the time. Um,
right.
and I think that a lot of people don't realize that renting, yeah, you don't have a lot of problems, but there are a lot of problems. I work in the water distribution industry, and
Hmm.
there if you have a landlord, at least in our city, and they don't pay their water bill on one building,
Hmm.
all of their buildings get turned off. So all of those
What?
people are
Guilt
out
by
of water.
association. Wow.
Yeah, and it's just I mean, I don't some it makes me upset when people, say like, "Oh, well, they just need to get a job. These people just need to get a job." Well, coming from a as someone from a rural area, it's you can get a job, but can
Right.
your job pay for your housing? And it's not,
Exactly.
and it's
Exactly.
not. And we are not going to have children, but because we want to travel, we want to
Hmm.
do things, and apparently that's selfish now. But I mean, if I don't know, I'd rather put money back into the economy by being able to afford to do things.
Right.
Whereas, I mean, I guess buying things for children, but I want them to
Yeah.
have a good life, and you
Kids
wouldn't
are
be able to.
expensive.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
Yeah. Well, that's crazy, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. Really, you don't want to have children. You want to travel. I get that. I have one child, and I think back, and I think I wish I would have had more. Although this one is one is enough.
yeah.
I think people who raise like I see them with 4 or 5 kids, at Walmart or
Yeah.
whatever. I'm like, oh, you guys are heroes in my book because that is really hard to do.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
speaking of Walmart, you were talking about you talked about the people getting their water cut off,
Mhm.
because they're not able to afford it or whatever. And then people to say go out and get a job, just
Yeah.
blithely dismiss them, go out and get a job. Well, the thing is, do you know Walmart is actually the biggest consumer of SNAP benefits?
Uh-uh.
Not directly, but they just don't pay their employees enough to be able to afford
Yeah.
healthcare and food. And so, in a sense, Walmart is underpaying these people, knowing that they're going to rely on government
Mhm.
services. So, our tax dollars, yeah, sure, it's going toward people that can't afford food. It's not because they're not working.
Yeah.
It's just that they're not being paid enough.
Yeah.
And that's another thing with today's salaries. And I'm going to go back to the good old days, right? The 1970s. I was just a kid back then. I was a little boy, but I remember this one film came or this TV series came out called All in the Family. You probably
Okay.
heard about it with Carol
Yep.
O'Connor and such. There was a typical American family in many ways because I mean, leave the racism and bigotry aside, but he was typical American family, and it was a fictional character, but he's a typical American family in the sense that he was the breadwinner of the house. He could
Mhm.
afford a house, he could afford a car, he could afford to send his daughter to college. All these things was done just on one person's job, and I
Yeah.
can't remember what his fictitious job was. If he was a cab driver or a longshoreman or something like that. But the reality now is that both parents need to work
Yeah.
just to keep up. And then it's an issue of childcare, right? And childcare can cost, 12 grand a year or more.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I don't understand how younger people can make ends meet these days. Honestly, I look at their wages and I look at the price of things. It's just out of control,
Mhm.
absolutely out of control. And it is this wealth gap, this great promise that we were sold back in the 1980s, this so-called trickle-down economics, which was the brainchild of Arthur Laffer, who was one of the economists out there. I think did more damage to this country than just about anybody else. But the idea there was that you give more money to rich people, and
Mhm.
then it trickles down to the poor people. But it doesn't. You give more money
Yeah.
to corporations, they buy back their own stock. You give money to rich people, they put it in overseas accounts and they buy
Yeah.
their yachts or whatever. So that doesn't work. And
Yeah.
so this is the bag of goods we've been sold, and the wealth gap since 1980. I use 1980 as an example because that's where our deficit was the lowest since World War II, and
Okay.
we were on the right track then. And it just started shooting up from there. The wealth gap shot up. Tax breaks for the wealthy, their taxes came way down.
Mhm.
Taxes for normal people like you and I, they didn't go down so much. So
Yeah.
we're kind of destroying ourselves, and so my theory of getting into politics is like, we need to start addressing some of these issues. We can't fix
Yeah.
everything all at once, but we need to start working on them.
Yeah. I like that your background, you have worked with a lot of people.
Mhm.
You had said that you were in marketing for a bit and doing some other things, and I think that that is something that a lot of politicians can't say. Sure, they've worked with other politicians. Sure, they've
Right.
worked with their donors. But the everyday people, I don't think a lot of politicians on either side have, are connected anymore, and
Yeah.
I really like term limits, because you
Yeah.
have to keep these people grounded, even if they, is it Florida that, like DeSantis, he can run again in 4 years, but he has to take 4 years off?
Oh, I don't
Is
know
that
about that.
I
Yeah.
believe that's how they
Yeah.
might do it so that
Mhm.
okay, well, I don't know. Last I knew, his wife was still running, and it's like, well, that's kinda not the point, but what but Byron Donalds is ahead anyways, but, some steps in place to keep politicians grounded. I think that's a huge issue,
Yeah.
is that politicians don't understand the what the people they're supposed to represent actually need because,
Yeah.
like you had said earlier, it seems like abortion was brought up and stuff, and reproductive rights are important, and especially in Iowa and Missouri. Some of the other issues that I noticed for going to Iowa caucus and being a uh, delegate was the platforms brought forward weren't real concerns from the community.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, we're not changing anything then, really, because
Yeah.
the stuff that you're talking about isn't even anything that's in a lot of the things were like federal issues. And it's like, why your
Right.
platform,
Yeah.
you're not going to be able to do anything about that? So I think a lot of people don't understand politics in general,
Yeah.
even when they're running.
Well, I think you've got one end of the or one side of that pretty well
Mhm.
down. I'd say a couple of things. One thing about term limits, I used to believe in them too. I'm not such a big believer in them in that I don't think the term limits actually solve the problem.
Okay.
Although I see what you're saying because you
Yeah.
get people that get entrenched and you get sort of like a dynasty grows within the Congress.
Mhm.
But I look at legislation like it's a game that a lot of these lobbyists play, and if you're filling in a slot right now, let's say like me, I'm going to be a slot 97 of the Missouri
Yeah.
House, if I get elected, that is. Um, they'll and if I leave for whatever reason because I'm termed out or whatever, they'll just put someone else in that same slot and
Yeah.
and and give them the same amount of money, and there's no term limit on lobbyists, in other words. And so, and
Yeah.
what happens in Missouri, and I've talked to some legislators about this, they said what happens is that new legislators get in there, the freshmen get in there, they don't know anything. And because we have term limits in Missouri too for the state house and the state senate,
Oh, okay. Yeah.
yeah, so people do get rotated out, but the new people that come in don't have that institutional knowledge. So who do they rely on? The lobbyists. So that
Yeah.
so I think the term limits don't necessarily solve the problem, although I get what you're saying because it makes sure that
Mhm.
real people come up. Now there is one way that I've come up with solving it in Missouri, and believe it or not,
Yeah.
I talked to my Republican opponent about this, and he gave me some advice. He says that's a good idea. He says, but don't don't campaign on it because it'll kill your campaign. But I'll say it anyways.
Yeah.
We need to make sure that the state legislatures, whether the House or the Senate, they need to be paid enough to have like a full-time job. I don't know what it's like up in Iowa. Here in Missouri, they get paid like $40,000 a year, which is not bad if you're living in areas that are fairly low income, but you can't live in
Yeah.
St. Louis or something like that. So what
No.
happens when you pay that small amount of money is you don't end up with the real people like you're talking about. You don't end up with police officers or electricians or
Yeah.
housewives or whatever. You don't those people they would love to do it, but they're
Yeah.
not being paid enough to do it. And then, you're going to be away from your home, every week for a certain number of days during while they're in session.
Yeah.
So that's an issue. And I don't know what to do about it, because it's really hard to go in there and say, well, I want to give us a raise,
Yeah.
want to give us a raise to, whatever decent salary is, maybe 60 or $70,000. And like my opponent said, you're gonna you're gonna shoot down your whole campaign by campaigning on it.
Right.
I think he's right too. But unfortunately,
Yeah.
something's got to be done about that because you don't get the normal people in Congress.
Right.
Another thing you said
Yeah.
too, which was, people don't feel like they're being represented. I don't know if you're familiar with represent.us.
Huh.
It's an organization. Check it out,
Okay.
represent.us. Um, Jennifer Lawrence actually did a very good video for them. This is probably about 2 years ago, and she actually brought to light to me, anyways, educated me on how it works in Congress, and there was a poll taken. She referenced a poll. It was a pretty famous poll that was taken some time ago. It was a study actually,
Uh-huh.
and it asked the question, or it posed the idea that, well, what kind of laws do we get? Do we get the laws that people want, or do we get the laws that the lobbyists want? And what they
Yeah.
found out is that whether or not people support a particular issue, the chances of them getting what they want stays at 30%. Whether they're for it or against it, it stays at 30% because the Congress people are not voting for what the people want. They're voting for
Right.
what their lobbyists and their donors are telling them to vote for.
Mhm.
And so these are the bigger issues. I think, yeah, term limits is just part of the solution. And
Yeah.
the problem with term limits is it makes you think, okay, job done, let's move on to the next thing. And it's like, no, that's just
Right.
part of the solution.
Yeah. Yeah, those are all really those are all really good points. Yeah, 'cause I mean, I don't know. Yeah, with getting the fresh faces. So I mean, when I had seen that Elon Musk had suggested we pay people more, like the congressman and everybody more.
Right.
At first I'm like, well, they get paid so much to hardly do anything.
Yeah.
But the points you made really good points. And then I will say, as someone who works full time and does a podcast, to really understand political issues, legislation, to really understand what you're doing, it is very, very time consuming. It could take
Yes.
me hours to make a 10-minute episode if you're fact checking and doing all that stuff.
Yep.
Then politicians, they also have to look good.
Yeah.
I mean, as petty as that sounds, you have an appearance, you have a team. There, that all costs money just to be able to be in the public eye.
Yeah.
Um, so they would either have to almost work while doing that, which takes their focus away from their job in politics, or I
Right.
guess get money from lobbyists. So,
Well, that's a very good point you bring up. Now we're talking about U.S. Congress.
mhm.
I was talking about state Congress before when I was talking about giving them a raise. U.S.
Yeah.
Congress absolutely does not need a raise. They get paid like
Okay.
$175,000 a year. That's
Yeah.
good enough. I mean, come on,
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
especially the U.S. House right now. They're not working,
Right.
so
Yeah.
it's crazy. But another thing though is that the U.S. Congress, they do what's called dialing for dollars, where they go out and they
Okay.
get their donors to donate to them. They
Uh-huh.
do these. They actually make phone calls. They sit there at a off site. It cannot be on government property because of the Hatch Act, so they got to go
Yeah.
off site. And I have heard that many of them, if not most, spend 50% of their time on the phone dialing for dollars. So they're
Really?
not really studying any of the legislation that's coming across their desk. They are
Mhm.
they're having their staff do it, or worse than that, they're having their lobbyists do it, and they are
Yeah.
out there dialing for dollars because they have to support their next campaign. So yeah, you bring up a very good point there. We got, they the U.S. Congress, they have staff. They're underpaid, I think, but they have staff anyways,
Mhm.
and they can do a lot of the research for them, but they rely way too much on their lobbyists and their
Yeah.
donors.
So earlier you had mentioned healthcare and public schools, and which one do I want to start with? Rural healthcare. It's
Sure.
That's been a big issue. I know that Iowa, they've passed some legislation to help fund hospitals in rural areas to stay open 24 hours because you might have to drive a long ways to get care if you're someone living out in the country.
Right.
Which I so I used to live in Austin, Texas, and some of my friends did not understand true rural areas where you
Mm,
don't see another house for miles, you know?
yeah.
And so it takes a long time for the ambulances to get to you. And if it's snowing,
Yeah.
they might not make it in time. So does Missouri face some of the same issues?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you're absolutely right about this. People who live in rural areas, especially ones that work on farms, not everyone who lives in a
Hmm.
rural area works on farms, but it's
Yeah.
usually agriculture related. But the ones on farms, that's one of the more dangerous professions out there, farming.
Yeah.
And you're out there all alone, right? And if I don't know, I've never worked on a farm myself, but I can just imagine all the
Hmm.
crazy things that could happen. Um, and or even if you have something as simple as a heart attack, you're
Yeah.
alone. I mean, you're out there on your combine
Yeah.
harvester or whatever, there's nobody out there for you. So, every minute counts in a situation
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, Missouri's had a lot of rural hospitals close, hospitals and health center, or what they call clinics,
Yeah.
or health clinics. A lot of them have closed, and more of them are closing. And that is a huge issue here. And especially as we start cutting back on Medicaid,
Mhm.
and they're talking about cutting back on Medicare right now. Medicaid and Medicare are some of the more reliable sources of income for these rural hospitals and health clinics.
Yeah.
And we start cutting back on the money, they start disappearing.
Yeah.
And it's we're rural adjacent here because you go much further south here, you're in a rural area.
Yeah.
Um, my wife used to work at the hospital here, and she would get people in there from 100 miles away or 150 miles away, drive 2 hours. Well, can you
Yeah.
imagine an ambulance ride? First of all, for the ambulance to get to you and then take it, you'd be dead. It's just as
Yeah.
simple as that. And
Yeah.
the only good solution I could come up with is, set up some mobile health centers, perhaps.
Mhm.
Maybe get, it's, I don't know how, I haven't gotten into the details yet in terms of like
Yeah.
exactly how much this would cost. I would also be for maybe getting the National Guard involved, and maybe they have a helicopter fleet. Maybe they can help
Yeah.
out with medevacs and stuff. Um, and the problem is, is the cost too. I mean, that puts
Mhm.
people out of business. Healthcare is the biggest reason that people go bankrupt in this country.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and it's just extremely challenging in rural areas. And
Mhm.
it's amazing to me that people in rural areas, they sort of shrug it off, a lot of them. But I think that that's easy to do until something happens, and
Yeah.
it's not so easy to shrug it off anymore. So
Right.
yeah, I don't know.
Right.
It's a huge issue. I'm glad that Iowa is doing something about it to help support some of these hospitals, and it would be interesting for me now that you've mentioned that to go and see what Iowa is doing and see if we can model
Yeah.
something in Missouri off of that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think obviously not the number, but I think it's called, like, the Rural Healthcare Act, so
Okay, I'll
I
look that
believe
up.
that's what that was called. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hopefully, it helps give some ideas.
yeah. I'm open to ideas because I got my own ideas. Some of them are kind of harebrained, and I bounce them off my wife sometimes. She's like, "Don't say anything like that in public." Okay, well, it's an idea, I mean,
Yeah.
you gotta throw it out there and see what
Right.
happens.
Yeah.
So,
See if it sticks.
yeah, see if it sticks,
So,
exactly. Yeah, good.
um,
So you talked about education as well,
yeah.
and that's another big issue, with
Mhm.
me. Yeah, Missouri, I was just looking up Iowa a little while ago, how they fund their education. It's not too different from Missouri. They seem to have,
Mhm.
like, some sort of a baseline that the state aims for,
Yeah.
a baseline amount that they would fund each child. But I didn't look into Iowa deeply enough to find out how, if at all, if the public education system is under threat.
Yeah.
Here we have this whole thing. We have this parental choice thing going on. Saying parents should be able to send their
Okay.
kids any school they want,
Yep. Yeah, we
and
call it
I'm like,
school choice
yeah,
here.
school
Yeah.
choice, and that is the biggest scam, I tell you, because
Mhm.
it, in my opinion, it's a huge scam.
Yeah.
What's happening in Missouri? We have this thing called Mo Scholars, and it
Okay.
is it's an organization where you can. It's a nonprofit organization, and you can send your money to them. Now, Mo Scholars takes money from people that they donate,
Mhm.
and then sends it out to 98% of 99% of them are private religious schools. You might say, okay, that's fine if it's people's own money. Who cares, right? Well,
Mhm.
I care because that money that you send into the state is actually a tax credit. That's different than a deduction. A tax credit is 100% rebate on your tax money. So, as an example, if you owe $1,000 to Missouri State for taxes,
Uh-huh.
you can take up to 50% of that. You can take $500 and send it to most scholars, and then send another $500 to the state tax board, and the state
Okay.
calls it even. So what you've basically done is you redirected upstream from the general fund. You redirected $500 into this most scholars thing. Now, who are the kids that go to these private schools? These private schools can charge tuitions of $12,000, $15,000,
Yeah.
$18,000 a year. Who can afford that, right? Okay, so
Right.
maybe you get a $6,000 rebate on it. Like if your child is sponsored by most scholars, okay, that doesn't mean it's
Mhm.
100% rebate. It just means that child gets subsidized.
Yeah.
So the rich people end up still sending their kids
Yeah.
to the private schools, and now they're getting a tax break for it, and it's coming out of the Missouri General Fund.
Mhm.
And it's not only just redirecting money before it hits the general fund, but this past year, the Missouri legislature said, we're going to send $50 million to most scholars as well. $50 million out of the general fund.
Yeah.
So that it's sliding backwards here.
Yeah.
We talked about the wealth gap earlier. This is the wealth gap in action. Rich people get to send their kids to private school, get
Yeah.
subsidized by the state on money that comes from the public schools.
Yeah. Um, so I believe Iowa and Texas are somewhat the same thing with their school choice programs. And my family in Texas, they send their daughter to private school, and their mother, she's like, I can afford to send my daughter to public school or to private school. I don't need any breaks. And other people need the breaks. I don't need them. And she said that the breaks that other people get to hopefully send their kid to private school instead of public school, it's not near enough money.
Right.
And then the family I talked to in Iowa, they're pretty well off too. But they're like, well, what's to stop the the private schools from jacking up their tuition
Yeah,
then as
exactly.
well?
Right.
No one I've talked to in Iowa or Texas is happy about this at
Yeah.
all. So
Yeah.
it's again just one of those things where when I when I'm looking at complaints on like Texas Governor Abbott's social media, everyone's complaining about property taxes, stuff like that. No one's complaining about the private school thing. No one wanted school choice. And I just think it shows how tone deaf some people are to their platforms.
Well, I think it's also shows how the grift is taking place in our politics right now because
Mhm.
who's profiting from these private schools?
Yeah.
And where's to follow the money, as they say. Where's
Yeah.
that money going? Yeah, that's when you look at Missouri, I think spends $8 billion a year. That's between state and local taxes, and I think the federal kicks in some amount too. But
Mhm.
that's $8 billion a year. Or rich folks look at that money and say, "Oh, look at all that money. How can we make some money off of this?"
Yeah.
And it's like, no, schools aren't made to be profit centers. Schools are made to educate the next generation.
Mhm.
So, and in a lot of cases, I suspect you see it up in your area too. A lot of these rural towns where they have a school, the school kind of becomes the center of a social life in many ways too.
Yeah.
Football on Friday nights, you got the basketball games and so on. You got the school plays, and I mean these are things that anyone that has a child, even if you don't have a child, it's kind
Yeah.
of fun to go watch these things once in a while.
Yeah.
And it's that's sort of like that's a slice of American pie in a sense,
Mhm.
and but people see that as a profit center, and it's so wrong-headed to look at things that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's, you know, I hear complaints about, teachers and stuff like that in the schools, and that's another thing that's brought up a lot is the what teachers are paid and,
Mhm.
if anything, I hear people want teachers to get paid more so that they can be a little bit stricter about who they're hiring
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah,
So
that's happening in Missouri. That I talked to Senator Tracy McCreary. She's one of the state senators here from the St. Louis area,
uh-huh.
and she said that Missouri is number 50 in terms of its pay to teachers.
Oh,
Um,
no.
it's really bad. It's this funding formula that they have in Missouri. Like I said, I think it's somewhat similar to Iowa, but
Mhm,
Missouri, they're supposed to update it every 2 years to adjust it for inflation and other factors.
mhm.
And yeah, we have a majority Republican legislature, and they just don't. They've squandered that responsibility. Now, the last session they did up it. I think they kicked in quite a bit of money, but if you run the numbers, the amount that they fund the students in say 2005, what they call the state adequacy target, which is like a
Okay,
baseline amount that they give to each, or that the state ensures that each student gets at least that amount.
okay,
Uh, either state money or local money, whatever. That was like $6,100, somewhere in that area, in 2005. Now the state legislature wants to break their arm patting themselves in the back because they just recently brought it up to like $7,100, which is like an 18% increase.
in 10
Well,
years?
in 20 years, actually,
Or
right?
20
So,
yeah, jeez,
yeah,
yeah,
and if you look at the cumulative effects of inflation over 20 years, it's 65%.
yeah,
So these guys are coming up like 47% short on this formula.
yeah,
And how do you expect? What other service do you know of that you pay them less money and a better job gets done?
yeah,
Guys, you'd be washing and waxing your car. I think you cut his salary in half. He's going to do the same job.
yeah,
No,
yeah.
Uh, I wouldn't
Oh
expect that from our
gosh.
schools either.
No, no, I graduated high school in 2005. I'm just thinking of, like, how much more affordable things were 20 years ago. That's insane for
Yeah, yeah.
wow.
Well, yeah, I mean, you always have to factor in inflation. I mean, there's always like they consider inflation like 2.5% to be
Mhm.
normal. So things are just going to go up. What
Yeah,
hamburger
yeah,
at McDonald's made it cost you when you graduated made it cost you like a buck and a half. Now it's
yeah,
like $3 or whatever. Okay, I mean that's to be expected.
yeah.
But when they don't, when it comes to people's pay, you have to also increase it two and a half
Mhm.
percent per year. And if you
Right.
don't, they're falling behind.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to tell you about my sponsors real quick. Sometimes I get on a roll cleaning or gardening, and I need a boost but don't have time for a meal. Big Fork Brand's pork jerky is the perfect choice to keep my momentum, offering high protein snacks for on the go energy boosts. Not only do they offer pork jerky, but they also make pork sticks, bacon sausage, bacon hot dogs, and burger and hot dog sauces. Products come in a variety of delicious flavors, including Thai green curry and maple and brown sugar for the meat options, and gangster and Chicago fire for the sauces. I personally think the original flavor of the pork jerky hits just right after tackling a big chore. It's a little salty and very flavorful. My discount code gives you 20% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit bigforkbrands.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Are you looking for a gift for a music lover, or maybe some apparel to show off your quirky side? Old Glory has you covered. With over 300,000 officially licensed items covering music, sports, entertainment, and pop culture, you're guaranteed to find the perfect item. They even have seasonal gear. My husband enjoys the Beatles and Led Zeppelin apparel, and I love the Billy Idol apparel. I even found items for my fellow plant enthusiasts. This family-owned superstore is known for their quality and customer service, offers free standard shipping on all orders, and orders are shipped the same day you purchase. My discount code gives you 15% off your entire order, and it's currently the best deal available. Just visit oldglory.com and enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. Looking for a game-changing way to improve your health? Zevo Life is the world's most nutrient dense whole plant, packed with over 50% plant protein, essential amino acids, fiber, and antioxidants. Harnessing the best nature has to offer, Zevo Life nourishes your body while driving your performance, vitality, and overall well being. Each serving is a concentrated source of clean, well balanced nutrition designed to support modern lifestyles, and just 1 teaspoon a day supports your gut, boosts energy, and promotes healthier skin and hair. It's no wonder that it's receiving rave 5-star reviews. Step into a healthier future with a 30% discount and a 30-day risk-free guarantee by visiting zivo.life and using my promo code. To support my show and to receive 30% off your entire order, enter in my promo code JADE, that's JADE, at checkout. So what about for those people that feel that their vote doesn't count?
Good one. Yeah. I think everybody can relate to that. The gerrymandering that takes place is pretty bad. Right now in Missouri, we just the state legislature decided to re-gerrymander the district mid-decade.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is Iowa wrestling with that right now too?
No,
I'm not sure.
not at
Okay.
all. Not even on the
Okay. Well, that's
radar.
good. Because you have a majority Republicans too. I'm sure that they're under some pressure from Trump to do that. But they did that here in Missouri, and the thing about gerrymandering, it takes away people's voice, in my opinion. And so one thing we're doing now in Missouri is we have this referendum in our Constitution. We're allowed to basically nullify any vote from the legislature, by popular vote. And so we have a referendum petition going out now that's going to hopefully reverse what the legislature did and go back to the regular districts.
Okay.
But yeah, this also goes back to the discussion I was talking about earlier with Jennifer Lawrence when she came up with that video. No matter how we feel and no matter how we vote, it seems like things just keep going the way they're going to go, and our votes don't count. And I think a lot of people get discouraged; they just stop voting. And it's really hard for guys like me to say, no, really, your vote does count.
I know.
How many times can you say that before people just throw up their arms and give up altogether?
Yeah.
And so, we, to a large degree, we have what we have because of people's voices are being not really suppressed, but just being ignored. And we need to put an end to that. And I don't have any specific, I don't know, specific course of action to take. But I think because it's death by a thousand cuts. And so we have to look at all these different places where people's voices are being ignored and fix it. Or one thing is, well, you're probably familiar with the Citizens United decision back in, I think it was 2011, where the Supreme Court basically said it's okay to have companies and rich people put as much money as they want into elections.
Right.
And so, politicians are basically bought and paid for.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how you vote. And that is extremely discouraging. And like I say, it's really hard for me to tell people that, your vote really does matter, but
Right.
it matters less than it used to. And we got to change that.
Well,
yeah.
You mentioned like getting your voice out there, and I've noticed from experience that if you are being mean or outrageous or just basically rage baiting, you're going to get 10 times more attention if you are just calmly speaking, trying to explain something, being nice, getting to the root of the issue. And I don't know how to solve that. Social media is great in some ways, and in others it's like you're really getting rewarded for just sitting there and typing inappropriate things all day or immature things all day.
Yeah. It's the
Most of the
society we
time.
live in these days, isn't it? It's I think there's a lot of truth to what you say right there. Definitely a lot of truth, and it's really hard to get people to pay attention. But there's this expression I've come up with, and I've used it quite a bit. It says, if you have to explain it, you've lost the argument.
Yeah.
And it's because the reality is that you're busy, you work full time, you also have your podcast.
Mhm.
Imagine if you put, kids on top of that or something. You've got 0
Yeah.
time to pay
Yeah.
attention to what's going on, right? And so
Right.
I get that too. I mean, that's the way most
Yeah.
people that's the way America works. But, we have to find a way to get our ideas out there.
Mhm.
And, my experience in marketing, we used to have what's called the 7 deadly words, and that means when you try to convey an idea, you have to condense it down to 7 words or less.
Okay.
And, yeah, thank God for ChatGPT because that helps a lot in doing in doing that kinda stuff. But,
Yeah.
human creativity also accounts for a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, it's just like, I've got, in fact, I got one of these cards right here. It's basically uh, a one of the, flyers I hand out to people.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
worked on this quite hard to get this down to just a few words because,
Yeah.
you can already tell by looking at this card, it's like almost too many words on it. I was very uncomfortable with that. But,
Yeah.
the big thing in the front just says basically, "Missouri is rigged," and
Right.
so, um, okay, that boom, that should set off some alarms in some
Mhm.
people, even if that's the last, if they see this card and if that's the only thing they see before they throw it to the trash can, um, that's a good message for me to put out there because it's gonna
Yeah.
intrigue them and say, "Well, how is it rigged? What are you
Right.
doing about it?"
Yeah.
So, but yeah, you're absolutely right. There is, I guess, Trump kinda set a bad eg not kinda, he actually sets a very poor example in that area because
Yeah.
he is obnoxious, he's, brazen, he's, sexist, he's racist. I mean, you can throw all these bad words at him, you can, but one thing he does do is he gets a lot of attention,
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
that's what sells, and that's a sort of a sad statement of today's, society, but
Yeah.
we just have to work with that somehow or another.
Right. Sometimes it's funny, but then other times it's like our president is really embarrassing right now.
Oh, yeah.
Like and sometimes I wonder if it's to instigate stuff, but it's like, that's why people didn't, some people didn't vote for you because of the way you
Mhm.
behave online.
Yeah.
So it's I don't know, but like you said, he still gets rewarded with attention by doing it, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
Any publicity is good publicity, but I think that one of the things I'm starting to see is that people are starting to get tired of it.
yeah,
They are really
absolutely.
starting to it's wearing us down,
Mhm.
and, I appear a lot on, well, not a lot, but I talk on a lot of podcasts. I've also been on conservative talk radio here in St. Louis a couple
Uh-huh.
times, and, they throw all that stuff at me, and I
Yeah.
have to not only defend myself, but also go on offense,
Yeah.
and, it's a really difficult thing to do, but, yeah, it's the reality that we live in these days. It's you got to be able to tell a good story. You got to be able to get the word out there quickly,
Uh-huh.
and yeah, you got to get yourself lodged in people's minds, and that's
Yeah.
difficult to do.
Yeah, I like your card that you have. So do you hand those out to people and or go door to door or
Both. Actually, I just had these made. They're about a week old right now,
okay.
and so I just I had some feedback from some friends, and just went in and just did a whole bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Um, Made it nice hot yellow like that so that it
Yeah.
sort of brightens up the day a little bit. But,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I
so I will be going door to door. I handed it out to a few people, but I will be going door to door with that shortly.
yeah. We I had someone in Iowa actually go door to door. We were out doing yard work and I hadn't heard of him before, and he
Mhm.
gave me some of his information, and it wasn't as nice as your card, but it was enough for me to think, "I wanna look more into this person." He actually took the time to come shake my hand, introduce himself. It
Yeah.
wasn't the nicest day out, so it really
Mhm.
does make an impression when you can do things in person like that, I
Yeah,
think.
don't ever underestimate, knocking on doors, and I make lots of phone calls too, just cold calling people and, get into some really good conversations with them, and, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. People appreciate that.
Yeah. So, you wrote an article, Moral Certainty and Political Blindness?
Oh,
Right?
okay.
Did you wanna talk about that? Like, what does that mean in a time when so many voters question the direction of our country?
Well, now I've written like over 200, no, about 150 articles right now. So now you're going to make me look
Okay.
it up.
Oh,
Give
no.
me a
Okay.
short
I'm
reminder
sorry.
what it, because I remember the title and everything, but I just trying to remember what it was right now. I actually challenged myself when I first came up with this newsletter. I challenged myself to write an article every single day, well, every single
Yeah.
weekday until I had
Yeah.
100 articles in the bank. And then, and it was really good because I get podcasters such as you. You're not the first one to do this to me. They say,
Okay.
"What about this
Yeah.
article back then?" I'm like, okay, now maybe it's my age.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I had seen your article on your page with, Dick Cheney on it,
Hmm.
and I mean, yeah, he passed yesterday, and I was like, "Is this coincidence that he's writing about Dick Cheney?" And then I saw that you had wrote you did write it after he passed away, so
Yeah,
but with him in the background in the sky, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this would be kind of a morbid funny thing,
yeah,
if you wrote it and didn't know he passed, but I saw that you did write it
yeah.
after he passed."
That was one I just now that one I remember because I just wrote that one. So thank you for coming up with something I remember.
Yeah.
But no, I that was it was actually it was something that's been on my mind for a long time,
Uh-huh.
and I've been wanting to write this article for a while. Then when Dick Cheney passed away, I thought, well,
Yeah.
maybe now's the time to write the article. So, yeah, it's I'm not a big fan of Dick Cheney. Rest his soul. I'm not going to
Mhm.
speak ill of the dead, but there are some things that
Yeah.
he did that really laid the groundwork for an authoritarian type of a takeover.
Mhm.
And the whole idea of the article was to say, here are all the things Dick Cheney did. He basically his big thing was to provide more power for the executive, more
Yeah.
political power for him, and unchecked power at that. And okay, so maybe he was frustrated because he came out of the Watergate experience and so on, and thought, this is unacceptable. Congress has too much power,
Yeah.
etc. So he opened up that door, but Trump just walked right through it. And I don't think that Dick Cheney actually, he has a conscience. It's buried pretty deep. I mean, some of the things he did
Mhm.
back in the early 2000s is unforgivable. But um, I think he realized, later on in life that these doors that he opened up were traversed by a person he never really counted on being there.
Mm.
I think he was counting on some sort of benevolent dictator or benevolent ruler of some sort. And
Yeah.
Trump is not benevolent by any stretch of the imagination. So he's going to take advantage of everything that Dick Cheney brought up to him. So,
Yeah.
and that was sort of the thrust of the article right there. It was just coming up with examples after examples about how that worked and how that's continuing to work. But in the end, I sort of compared it to Frankenstein's monster. I don't know if
Yeah.
you're familiar with the story of Frankenstein, but
Yeah.
he was basically the scientist, right? And he created this monster in his lab, and it escapes his lab, and it reached
Yeah.
them in a local village, and so that's where I think Dick Cheney was in his final days. And um, did he personally regret it? I don't know, but it was interesting that he did advocate for Kamala Harris to be president, because I think he
Yeah.
finally began to realize this stuff is pretty serious. So,
Yeah. What do you think people often misunderstand about politics in rural or red areas like Jefferson County?
oh wow, that's a big question. Lots of answers to that.
I know,
Uh,
so and I kinda bounce around, so I'm
yeah.
sorry about
Oh no,
that.
it's
I'm
it's
like,
good.
well, I like to
You
get
you're
the best
challenging me. Yeah.
questions.
It's a good challenge. It's a good challenge. Yeah, yeah, I think a lot of people miss a lot of things. First of all, I'll pick on the Democrats because I think that's a I could pick on Republicans, but I'd just be beating the same drum again. But I'm going to pick on Democrats for a while because I think that they dropped the ball in many ways.
Oh,
Um, they're players. They're on the take, like just just like the Republicans are. They're answering to their donors. Not all of them, and not all
mhm,
Republicans are that way either, but a majority of them are.
yeah,
And it can really be seen. People talk about Barack Obama and they just kind of praise the ground he walks on. I don't. I think Barack Obama was. I don't think he was intentionally corrupt, but
yeah,
he let a lot of corruption occur underneath him. Um, who was it? Eric Holder was his attorney general at the time. And I don't know if you remember this, but the 2008 financial crisis comes up.
Mhm.
It was really due to over speculation and misrepresentation of these of mortgages, and the
Okay.
whole thing just collapsed, right? So what happens with this TARP money that was supposed to bail out people? Well, one good thing Obama did, I think he helped some automobile companies recover, and that
Oh,
money was
yeah.
loaned to automobile companies, so that was good.
Yeah.
But basically, he bailed out Wall Street and
Mhm.
ignored Main Street. And that was an unforgivable sin. I think that was the
Yeah.
one thing that a lot of people didn't forgive him for, because
Yeah.
what Wall Street did is they turned around and they foreclosed on Main Street,
Yeah.
and who was that, Mnuchin, Steve Mnuchin, who was on Trump's team, and the first time around he was out in California. He was known as the foreclosure king out there. His
Okay.
One West Bank was made by just buying some of these distressed properties. I don't know how much he paid on the dollar, but probably just pennies on the dollar.
Mhm.
And then he rewrote, kicked people out of their homes, foreclosed on their homes, and then turned around and resold these homes. Um, then Eric Holder, who used to work for, he was the attorney general at the time.
Uh,
Prior to being attorney general, he worked for a lawyer's firm. I can't remember the name of it. Covington and Baring, I think it was. Um,
okay.
and the that law firm was defended a lot of these big banks, provided a lot of cover for these big banks that were in the middle of this foreclosure.
Uh,
And when Eric Holder retired, I think it was 2015, shortly before the election in 2016, he retired. He goes back to the same companies and defends the very companies that were responsible for the foreclosures.
mhm.
Meanwhile, he was the one that said, uh, it's uh, it's too big to ignore. Financial institutions are too big to. Um, well, basically, he didn't want to prosecute anybody because they're too
Yeah.
big to fail. That was his
Okay.
excuse.
Right.
And then he was subpoenaed by Congress and he refused to show up. This all this stuff happened under Obama, and I'm like,
Yeah.
what is Obama doing? Is he really
Yeah.
advocating for the people? Then
Yeah.
another thing that in 2016 during the convention, Michelle Obama gives this speech and says, "When they go low, we go high." It was a horrible piece of advice because that basically told everybody that, well, if you don't see things our way, we're on the high road and you're on the low road,
Yeah.
and that
Yeah.
really incensed a lot of people. So, I'm really I can see where people are coming from, and I think that
Mhm.
their grievances with the Democratic Party are very valid, and we do have to
Yeah.
clean it up. And right now, yesterday we had that big election, in New Jersey and
Yeah.
Virginia and so on. Democrats swept up pretty well, but that's not because the Democrats are the good guys. It's just because they aren't the bad guys. That's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. So
Yeah.
it's the Democrats. If they don't clean up their act, they're still not going to get any major seats in the next election.
Right. That's what I'm so I vote both ways, and, I try to stay grounded in what I try not to get caught up in anything, and it can be kinda heartbreaking
Yeah.
to actually recognize the flaws in both parties,
Hmm.
and I do see some issues for the Democrat Party moving forward. I see a lot of infighting in the Republican Party, so I guess my, whole outlook on the future isn't very great right now,
Hmm.
but, yeah, I really wish that both sides could stop with the name calling, the rhetoric, stuff like that, and I think
Yeah.
that both parties would be doing better if they could stop with that,
Yeah.
and, yeah, it's I don't
I
know,
absolutely
it's,
agree. I wish we could get to that. And I think we are eventually going to get to that. My approach to local politics here, anyways, is to get close to the Republicans, even
yeah,
though I'm a Democrat. I go
yeah,
to a lot of their events. There's a guy, Phil Amato, who is a Republican. He's going to
okay,
run. He's the incumbent, going to run for one of the districts here,
mhm,
one of the state representative districts. I know
Yeah.
him personally, and I will be going to his kickoff. I went to a
Yeah.
kickoff of several of them. Um,
Yeah.
I've met with my counterparts in the Republican Party. Even when I
Yeah.
was actively running against one of them, we would still meet. Um, and now my Republican opponent is going to have a primary opponent.
Yeah.
So I've gotten pretty close to his primary opponent. Both of them are named Dave, which makes things confusing.
Yeah.
Um, but I get together with him pretty often. We not only run into each other, we've also had lunch together, and we talk over the issues. And just like you
Yeah.
say, we're talking over the issues. And this other Dave, the one that's running the primary, um, we were talking. It was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. We had a lengthy discussion. We
Mhm.
started talking about all the places we agree, and I'm like, I'm
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
Dave, why are we on the opposite side of these
Yeah.
things? And so, but we do have our disagreements, obviously, because he has different approach on things, but whole lot of stuff we agree on, and so I think that's the way politics should be. We should be at the
Absolutely.
end of the day shaking hands, and okay, we're not going to agree.
Yeah.
Um, if we're going to get in a fight, okay, we'll punch each other in the nose once or twice, and then we'll come out as friends, and have a beer or
Yeah.
something. That's the way it should work.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been so happy with John Fetterman lately trying to when the Trump administration came in, he made it a point to talk with everybody right away, meet with them, and I'm afraid he's gonna get ousted because he's going against the grain, and, it it and I hate to see that, just the same as I hate to see Republicans, attack Rand Paul and Thomas Massie. If they're going with what they think is right, or like John Fetterman's trying to work with people on the opposite aisle, that's exactly what we want, and, too the other thing I notice when people are running for a position is they think that I don't know, I guess I want both candidates to be good people. That way
Mhm.
you're that c because it's the country. You wanna
Right.
vote for the best of the country or your district or, you know, um, and I think too much is getting caught up in the fighting and putting people down, and,
Right.
so I really like to hear I like what I'm hearing that you're saying that you're out there doing, which is exactly what we need, is to be talking to other people regardless of what side of the political aisle they're on. It shows that you actually care to improve things for the
Yeah.
citizens.
Yeah. But there's
So
a limit to that as well, because who is that? That philosopher Karl Popper, I think. Yeah, Karl Popper wrote this thing
mhm.
called the tolerance paradox. I don't know if you're
Yeah.
familiar with that.
Uh,
You know, you that was one of the mistakes. I forgot the fellow's name, who was the head of the Heritage Foundation and had some kind words to say about Tucker Carlson interviewing Nick
oh,
Fuentes. And he
oh.
said, "Yeah, we should, ignoring him is the wrong thing to do. We should at least listen to him." I'm like, "No, I think that there is a point where if some guy is talking about, basically he's a Nazi, and he's talking about, the Nazi things, the fascist
Uh-huh.
things,
Oh,
I
yeah.
will not engage with them at all. That goes beyond the pale for me."
Was that Nick so I haven't watched this yet. Was that Nick Fuentes? I don't
Yeah,
watch any of his content. I don't know anything about him, but I'm like, "This might be something that I wanna listen to."
yeah, it
So
was Tucker Carlson, I guess, had interviewed him.
okay.
And, it's supposed to be like, "Oh, we're all free speech this, free speech that." But the thing about Karl Popper's tolerance paradox, he basically said, "A society that tolerates the intolerant will eventually become intolerant."
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that's where I draw the line. I will not engage with someone
Yeah.
that says, that certain people of a certain skin color should just be, burned at the
Right.
stake or something like that. I'm not gonna
Right.
do that. I'm not gonna go there. So,
Yeah.
but that really is, I've never run into a Republican locally that is
No.
intolerant like that. So I can always engage with them
Mhm.
if we're gonna speak about basic human rights and things like that. We all agree on that. So,
Yeah.
um but yeah, that
Yeah.
I do have a line there that I draw.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. If there is, you're encouraging violence or hate against somebody, I don't
Yeah.
I don't,
I won't engage with them. Yeah,
Yeah. Yep. Nope, they don't deserve more attention than what they're already getting.
exactly,
Like we are saying,
exactly.
that internet seems to create monsters, and now, yeah, he's got attention now, so, ugh.
It's amazing we had a, town hall the other night, and somebody brought that up. They said, "Aren't you afraid because, there's so much, vitriol online and stuff?" I says, "Yeah, I see it a lot of, people cuss me out or whatever."
Yeah.
But, when I knock on doors and stuff, I've rarely run into a
Mhm.
situation where somebody was nasty to me. The
Yeah.
worst that happens to me, they slam the door in my face, right?
Yeah.
But I had this one guy, it was I like to tell this story. I knocked on his door and it was like he answers and he's wearing this MAGA hat, and his
Yeah.
and like I could just take a look at him like, oh gosh, I just got myself in some trouble here. So
Oh, no.
I start talking with him. He says, "You Democrat or Republican?" I says, kind of meekly returned. I said, "Oh, I'm a Democrat." And I look at him, he looks at me, I said, "You're not gonna pull out your shotgun and shoot me, are you?" He just started laughing. He's, "No, no, no." He says, "But, you're probably not gonna do much good here." I said, "Okay, thanks, I'm out." But,
Yeah.
um, but that's kind of the worst thing I run into. But
Yeah.
online, it's a lot of vitriol because people think
Mhm.
they're anonymous,
Yeah.
and then the ogre inside them comes out, but,
Yeah.
people aren't as anonymous as they think they are, so
Right. Right.
if you really wanna find out who someone is, you can find out who they are.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, oh, sounds good. Is there any other, message you wanna drive home, or anything else you want the audience to know?
No, just the website is danformo.com. That's the number 4. MO is the Missouri
Mhm.
abbreviation. I don't know how they came up with MO, but I guess it was already taken with Montana or something.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
but no, it's danformo.com. And from there, there's a bunch of links at the bottom of the page. You can go off to the newsletter, frontlineprogressive.com,
Yeah.
TikTok,
Okay.
Facebook, etc. So it's a good jump off point. And if people want to donate, that's always appreciated as well.
Yeah, sounds good. I will make sure to put the link in the show notes and on,
Okay.
all the social media stuff.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping we could talk a little bit more about what's going on up in Iowa because there's some challenges going on up there that
Yeah.
you guys are wrestling with concentrated animal feeding operations up there, and you're involved in the water industry. I noticed.
Yeah.
So that is that is one of the things that the water in Iowa is. I don't know, maybe you know more about it than I do, but I've heard that you can't really drink any water coming out of the ground, any wells in Iowa anymore because of
Yeah. So, agricultural runoff is one of the largest water pollutants, and obviously we're an agricultural state. Luckily, the water in the system that I work with is all groundwater from confined aquifers. So it's
Mhm.
actually, for our state, it's actually, the best water in the state.
Okay.
However, other systems pull from rivers, and they're getting that agricultural runoff, and
Yeah.
they have so much more to do with it, as far as making that water safe to drink. Um,
Mhm.
so I'm lucky in my area. Other areas are not, and yeah, we have a lot of high cancer rates, and I keep seeing debates on what's causing it and what's not, and it's like, well,
Yeah.
hard for me to believe it's not the runoff into
Oh,
the,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
There's 25 million hogs in Iowa,
yeah,
and hogs produce, so much more waste than people do, and that all
yeah,
that waste is unregulated, it's just they
yeah,
dump it on farmers' fields or whatever, and it's like, "Oh, it makes great fertilizer." Yeah, but it also pollutes the aquifer, so
mhm,
That
yeah,
those are real big issues up there. And the reason why I bring that up is because it's going to start happening in Missouri pretty
yeah,
soon. We have these CAFOs, the concentrated animal feeding operations.
mhm,
They're trying to make their inroads into Missouri here, and I always point to Iowa and say, look at what's happening up in Iowa. There,
yeah,
that's a lesson to be learned up there.
yeah, yeah, and it's, so I went to school for environmental science too, so it's like, okay, I'm surrounded by farmers. I have family who are farmers, and so I'm trying to explain to them they're not huge operations by any means. So it's really, a lot of this doesn't apply to them, but it's like, well, they just feel attacked sometimes when you talk about
Hmm.
farming, and it's like, well, if we can figure out a different way to do things, I'll see, like, in Nebraska, all of these, um, cattle on cement, you know, and
Hmm.
that's hard for the cattle, that's hard on the environment. It's, I don't know. It's just,
It's horrible. Yeah,
yeah. Yep.
it's very inhumane the way they
You
do it.
know, yeah. And then all of that goes down to the Gulf of Mexico and all,
Yeah,
you know, so when you have this agricultural runoff, it causes ammonia spikes. It kills plant life, it kills fish. It affects everything, you know,
yeah.
and people don't realize that. You'll have a farmer dump waste in a next to a stream illegally, of course,
Hmm.
and then you have a giant fish kill, and it's like, okay, I mean, it affects everything. Soil erosion with the chemicals. It's
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it needs addressed.
They're doing stuff like that in Missouri now. They passed a law some time ago that said that these CAFOs need to have certain setbacks from streams, and certain, need to be like, they can't dump their waste like within 50 feet of a house. I'm
Uh-huh.
like, 50 feet, that's nothing,
No.
right? And so all that stuff just leaches into the aquifers. But the one thing that they did with this law was they said no county in Missouri will come up with any laws that are more strict than the ones we came up with. So you can't regulate. The counties
Yeah.
have lost the ability to regulate these things, and the county health departments are, their hands are tied.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a horrible situation because, you want to take care of the land. Most farmers are very farmers I know anyways are pretty conscious about the
Yes.
land,
Yeah.
and that's how they make their living. And Native
Mhm.
Americans knew this instinctively,
Yeah.
centuries ago. So um, if you don't take care of the land is not going to take care of you. And
Yeah.
yeah, these diseases you're talking about and cancers and such.
Mhm.
I don't want to be like full on like RFK Jr. sort of paranoid sort of thing. I think he goes too
Right.
far, but he does have some good points, and he has some background in environmental sciences such as
Mhm.
you. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, this is a more minor concern, but miles away, you can smell these confinements, and
yeah,
that's also something. I mean, who wants to live next to that? Or even my if I can smell it from 10 miles away if the wind's blowing, because again, rural areas, you know, it's just
yeah.
yeah.
And that just, people that move out to the rural areas, maybe they want the fresh air and sunshine and stuff. They're not going to
Yeah,
get it. And farmers who are already there, or the people that are already there, suddenly one of these CAFOs move in next door. It ruins it for everybody. Their property
yeah,
values drop and everything. It's
yeah.
horrible. It's
Yeah,
horrible.
no one wants to look at that either,
Yeah.
you know, when they're I just get so depressed, look across the street and all these poorly treated animals, you know,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
so
That's so inhumane, and it's,
yeah,
I don't know what to do. The problem is beef. I understand is peak, or is doing really well right now. Cattle
yeah,
is doing really well, but now that's from what I understand of cattle, a lot of it is ranched.
yeah,
So that's I think that's okay to do that.
yeah,
Just when you get them concentrated in those cement floor factories, it's not the right thing to do
yeah.
from so many angles.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, a lot of the ones I see around here, they are ranched. The animals have plenty of space. They're doing great, but those concentrated ones, they're a nightmare
Yeah,
and
yeah.
like a real life nightmare.
Oh yeah,
So
they do that with chickens too, and it's just
yeah.
horrible. Some of
Oh,
these chickens
yeah,
strangle on the air that they're given to breathe. It's horrible,
yeah,
horrible.
absolutely.
And you got
Yep.
to think, if they're getting sick on this stuff, guess where their meat is going, right? So
Right.
it's right to your dinner plate. So
Right. Yep.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we talked about something really depressing toward the end here.
I know. I know. It is an important issue though, and I always like it when we can go off into environmental stuff because that's yeah, how I just found my way into politics because it's um
Well, they're very
I
much related.
yeah. Yeah.
Very much related.
Yes, they are. Yep. Yep. So,
Yeah.
and this is I guess stuff you can get involved in and try and change environmental policy if you're involved in politics. So,
Yeah,
yep.
the current political climate is not too friendly to environmentalism right now. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
that's hopefully that'll pass.
Yeah. Yeah. We'll see. So, all right. Well, I'm going to be keeping tabs on you and seeing how you're
Okay.
doing
Oh, appreciate it. Yeah,
So,
if you wanna talk again, just let me know. I'm here.
oh,
I'm up for it.
absolutely. All right,
Yeah,
sounds good. Yeah, if you have anything that comes up, yeah, just
I'll give you a
message
shout.
me. We'll figure it out. Sounds good.
Great.